All right, dude. Oh,
Here we are. It's kind of weird, like trying to dance in a chair, but I'm kind of getting used to it.
dance in a chair.
That sounds
Woo!
like really good. I feel like that's something that the Black Eyed Peas would sing or something like that.
dance in a chair. Uh, put the meat down.
One, two, three, let's go!
Hey everyone, welcome back to Sweet and Sour Monologues. I'm Melissa, your host and monologue queen. Hey. Today we have a special guest with us today, my wonderful friend and artistic colleague, Dante. Hi, Dante.
Hello, hello, hello.
So, a few small updates and announcements, real quick, before we get into our main discussion today. First, I'm sorry I've been kind of inactive on social media this week. If you already know, I've had a tough week. My computer just crapped out on me. Um, I had to go buy a new one. It's nice though. I really like it. I can do a lot more work on it. And then I got a new roommate this week, so it's been pretty hectic and trying to get my apartment in order with my roommate. Um, and also, if you don't know, we are now moving our regular days back to excuse me, can't talk today. We're moving our regular days to Tuesdays and then sometimes Fridays if I feel like doing a podcast that day. So of course this week we have Dante as our guest, and then next week we're also going to have a special guest. I'm not going to say who it is yet; it's a secret. But I'm excited to talk to. He's like, ooh. I'm excited to talk to that person, see what they have to say in terms of their career as an artist, and then what they've experienced during their career. So I'm excited for that interview and see how it goes. Yeah. So
It's gonna
also,
be a good one.
yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to share who it is. She just, I just said gender. Damn it. She posting my questions online on Instagram, and she was like, I can talk to you about this. I can rant for hours. I was like, you want to do an interview? She goes, yeah. So I'm excited to see how that goes. I'm excited. I said that 20 times already. All right. Also, a quick thing. Y'all probably know that I love Jenna Marbles and Julian Solomita. Today they announced they're no longer doing their podcast, and I am I'm sad about it, but at the same time, I want to make sure they're like really happy in their lives. I hope they're doing well. Jenna's been off the internet for a few months now, and she said that she's been doing well on the podcast, and she's gotten some help. I'm guessing that means she's gotten some therapy or something that's been doing well for her. So I hope they do well in everything they do. And Julian's still been streaming on Twitch, but yeah, it's a bittersweet morning this morning to see that on my feed, and I just wish them the best. And yeah, they've gotten me through some tough times. They always make me smile and laugh. And of course, I miss Jenna, but at the same time, I want her to do well in her life because she's a person too. She has her own things she needs to worry about, and she's cared so much for people over the years. And I think that's
Definitely.
yeah, she's done a lot to make me realize a lot about myself as well. And it's hard. It's hard to see that person go through such a tough time on their own when you think they've got their shit together. It's like proves a lot that they probably don't have their shit together. So, you know, yeah, you never know. You never know.
It it's life is goes in 20 different directions, more than
Mm-hmm.
20, and so it's just take it day by day. It's a
Right.
choice every single day. So,
Mm-hmm.
I guess this is where, not to plug anything, but my tea that I've been drinking comes with a quote,
Oh, I love this one.
and it says, if plan A didn't work, the alphabet has 25 more letters. Anonymous.
I love that.
I You can interpret that however you like, but that was just interesting to segue in there.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, I love that. The world works in mysterious ways. Let's get real. Like it's
definitely.
insane. Oh yeah. You can call it the world, the universe, God, whatever you want to call it. It's crazy the things that just happened. So yeah.
Hmm.
But anyway, so moving on to today's discussion. Today we're going to discuss some things about art, careers in art, what it means to be a creative person, so to speak, what that means, I guess, to us and to people who have responded. These questions came from me posting on my Instagram stories to my art friends, my colleagues. I got a few responses. We're going to read through those today, and then we're going to discuss them together and just give our opinions on what it means to be an artist today and how we interpret it. So let's get started, dude.
Yeah, let's do this.
All right. So, I guess this question came out of me after I was looking into an artist I follow. Her name's Sweeney Boo, and she was doing questions like on the stories, like you can ask stories on Instagram and or ask questions on Instagram stories, and people can respond. And she just let people ask her whatever. And someone says, "I've never really seen your face," and she goes, "Because I wanted to focus on my art." And you know, and to me that is a huge thing for me. Like I like to post things going on in my life, but I also hate really posting my face because people can be real judgmental. And I know a big thing with me is like having insecurities about my plus size self, and or even the way I look, or like today I don't have makeup on and I just threw my hair up in a bun, and that was a little like, maybe I should put something on. And I was like, I don't give a shit. But so it's like, can we do things? I didn't put this question in, but led me to this question. Can we do things on social media that we don't have to like show our face in terms of being an artist? And so, like selling our body, selling our faces, or anything like that. So it just kind of led me to ask, like, can we thrive as artists only selling our work on social media or online? Has social media made it harder or easier to get our work out there? I did get one response from my friend Ashley. She said, to me, social media is sharing and sharing. I can't read. To me,
You're
social
good. You
media,
got this.
yeah, it's hard for me to read or talk today, I swear. But to me, social media sharing to me is funny sometimes. Some random person may be able to see your artwork and add a like that we're so desperate to have, or I guess some of us are. But I say I would much rather have someone see my work in person. There's something so different. There's a feeling you get when someone's analyzing your work. That feeling you felt when creating comes back when you see someone lost in your work. Social media takes that away, which is true. We're hidden behind screens. However, you may find out they're total strangers who still love what you put out, and that's also great. My only thing is when sharing, I sometimes worry about putting too much out there because someone can easily claim it, and no one wants that. Unfortunately, posting means that social media sites, if wanted, could use whatever it is you posted. I'm pretty sure it's still how it is, and as an artist, I don't want my work used without acknowledging who is behind it.
Hmm.
So, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of, because one thing to mention, with social media is just in that first part, sometimes we're desperate to get a like,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and there is that trap that is very easy to fall into with any social media. It's just the dopamine effect. When you get a like, it makes you feel good. And not that there's any shame in that. It's like you posted this and you're getting a response and it's great. However, there comes a point where that becomes a trap, and you end up focusing so much more on that, on the whole social acknowledgement, as opposed to just posting something because it's what you want to post, and you're not looking for social approval, or any sort of any sort of uh, I guess the appreciation factor, the social acknowledgement factor. um, and so, as long as you come from that center of, I want to post this because it's something that I'm passionate about, and maybe someone would, you know uh, share the same response. I mean, you never know what doors could open up when you do that on social media.
Mm-hmm.
But the second half to that, about when you do show work in a gallery, And I understand what she's talking about. It's very easy to pull out your phone and swipe through and hit a double tap. You
Right.
know, I like that image. I like that image. But when you actually see work in person,
Mm-hmm.
uh, you're able to take in much more of the artist's presence, what they
Mm-hmm.
did to the work, and there's a much more of a methodical way of looking at things as opposed to on a screen.
Right.
So, you know, as an artist, that is probably way more enjoyable to have that moment where you're just looking at what people are doing around your work. You know, there's a perplexity to it, and you're very, very uh, sort of interested in like, why are they looking at this so heavily, you
Mm-hmm.
know, as opposed to looking at it on their phone. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've scrolled through Facebook or Instagram, and it's like, yeah, cool, you know, like that, like that. But then when I see the work in person, it takes me to a whole other level.
Mm-hmm.
There's the psychology changes, and so as a result, um, I feel much more immersed. I feel much more of an appreciation, I guess, in some ways when I see the work in person. Um,
Sorry,
so
my
yeah,
boyfriend's blocking my light.
you're fine. You're good. But yeah, I think that yeah, there is just there's good and bad with everything, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so with social media, you know, the good is the exposure is there. You do
Right.
get the exposure. And when someone is able to show an appreciation by liking your post, it's like, great, that feels good. But I guess in the same way, going back to college and
Mm-hmm.
painting critiques, I remember one of the
Yeah.
professors would always say, don't come up here and just say, I like it. You know,
Right.
tell us why you like it. If you say, I like it, say, I like it because. And the problem with social media is you get the like, but you don't get the because. And so when you're in a gallery setting, you can get the because, you know? So I think that's just one of the things that's where it's like there's good and bad in both. So
Yeah, and I have to agree. Like I was going to mention that too. I think the one thing I really like about being in college personally is getting that critique from uh, your peers who do the similar medium or the same medium or even a different medium completely, and just trying to see it from their side, and as well as just giving constructive criticism, something that doesn't have anything to do with you as an artist, doesn't have anything to do with you personally. It just has to do with your work, you know.
yeah,
And I think that's kind of the negative side for me as social media. Is like a lot of people, you know, I think a lot of people think Instagram and everything kind of started with just the people and you know, those standards online that come from Kardashians and etc., where we have to look a certain way and be a certain way and act a certain way. And that's why I always thought, like, should I even show my face? Should I make a separate account? Did I even bother? Because I don't really like posting pictures of myself, you know.
hmm,
It's just, it's difficult when we can't get views for all this work that people do as artists. But and I know you may not know who this is, but I'm on TikTok a lot. Charlie D'Amelio can get millions of likes for eating a piece of cake, you
mm,
know. And there was
yeah,
a TikTok made about that, where, you know, an artist is like, I do all this work and she can get millions of views eating a cake. And it's just kind of like, yes, you know, but she's kind of primed to get those
yeah,
views. She's put herself literally in a business to get views and make money off of it. Where if you want to go that route, then maybe it's not going to be about your art anymore. You know, it's
yeah,
just going to be about you and how people judge you as a person and how you look and how you act. So I just think it's such a double-edged sword for us, where we want to get our work out there, or maybe just get some recognition online and put our stuff in a place where people can see it.
yeah.
But on the other end, it's just like, well, how do we get recognized? And is that, you know, I guess best word for it or phrase for it would be selling out, I guess. Is that selling out in a sense? So
Yeah, well, and something that's interesting too to point out is, there is the whole, I post this picture, I've spent all these hours, and yet I only get 100 likes. Okay. And someone else will post a picture of their lunch and they'll get 2,000 likes or something like that. And I'm not saying that to, discredit people who have that going on with them. That's fine if you do. However, what I like to encourage people is, regardless of where you are, follower wise, like wise, just because you don't get a certain amount of likes doesn't make you any less of an artist or any less of a person. There are all sorts of components that are involved in social media in terms of how they operate and stuff like that. But ultimately, for me, if I'm going to post something, I'm not necessarily going to post something for the sake of, I want to get the likes. There is that thought that does cross your mind, probably right when you're about to post. You're going to hit that post button and you go, oh, I hope this gets this many likes. But the minute that I hit that post button, that thought immediately fades away. And I no longer should care, because ultimately what I'm doing is I have faith enough in my work as it is to stand on its own. And every artist should. I think every artist should have faith in what they do. Martin Scorsese, the movie director, he was doing a master class. And I watched just the advertisement for it. There was a trailer for it. And he said, if you're coming here to watch this, to be a director, to make money, you're in the wrong spot. But if you're here to do this because you're passionate about film, then you're in the right spot, And so for me, that was sort of, and I've had that mentality even before I saw that trailer, but there is just like, what is the reason why you're posting it? Are you posting it because you're truly passionate and you just want to share, what with the world, your mind, because you have a beautiful mind. There's lots of beautiful minds in this world, and they make up this vast world that we live in. And so with that, it's just, I guess what I'm trying to get to, the point that I'm trying to get to is, at base level, we're storytellers, right? We want to tell our story. And we've been doing, the cavemen did it when they started painting cows on a wall. The Renaissance decided to do it with oil paints or sculpture, and then you had the contemporary era. And so and then of course, then you have all the other arts on top of that. You have dance, you have cinematography, you have culinary, we're all trying to tell this story about who are we in this vast world. And when you think about it in those terms, then you realize, like, it doesn't matter how many likes I get. It doesn't matter, who follows me. It's just a matter of, I'm just trying to build my story and find out who I am.
Right.
So.
Yeah. And I think too, like, one rule I do have with myself personally, when we go back to posting things on social media, is I post it, I close the app and I leave it alone. And then if I come back on it for other stuff, like maybe Martin sends me something and I want to look at it, because he tends to ask me, did you see what I sent you? But yeah, if I want to look at it, or I'm like, oh, I need to look this up or whatever, or I just want to look at random things, I don't even want to look at my profile, I'll check my likes for 2 seconds, because it pops up anyway, it gets in your face. and then I'll move on, and but it's taken me time, and I guess you could say willpower, to not obsess about it and not get stuck on it. And it sucks that that's what we're kind of conditioned with this thing to do. But at the same time, we also do like to connect. And, same thing with, I'm going to have this interview with this guest next week. And it's like, I would never get that, one, from my job, and two, from still being able to talk to her through this platform. I wouldn't have gotten that otherwise. So I think it has such good things and bad things with it.
It does. And it does come down to a self-discipline, right? And so, like you said, there's times when you have to turn the phone off, and leave it in the other room.
Right.
And so, yeah, I think for me that's sort of the same thing. If I ever get to that point where it's like, oh, I want to check my likes, and there's nothing wrong with wanting to see what you get,
Mm-mm.
but the trap to fall into is just to constantly seek it out, and
Right.
it's the whole dopamine effect, and
Right.
it's this social. You want to have some sort of social acknowledgement, and it's just very easy to fall into a trap of wanting more.
And
And so,
I think it's
yeah,
also a trap of falling into not just likes, but validation from strangers that don't even know you, don't know what you do,
yeah,
in terms of your art, like how much work you do and stuff like that. And
yeah.
even then, no validation when you do all this work, but then you're not getting recognition, and then you feel down on yourself, and you feel like you're terrible or you're a failure just for not getting
Mm,
a certain amount of likes.
yeah, yeah. There, and that's where it's for me. If I ever do get to that point where it's like maybe this piece didn't get as many likes as I wanted it to, I have to sit down and ask myself, okay, well, what do you think? At
Mm-hmm.
me personally, talking to myself
Right.
here, what do I think? And of course, for me, I'm going to be the worst critic ever, and I'm going to say, well, I could have done this better. I could have painted that hand better, or I could have done
Mm-hmm.
this better. But nonetheless, what I think about the piece in terms of the goals that I set upon myself. Did I tell the story that I wanted to tell? Did I get the concept down that I wanted to get down? If I can hit these checkpoints and find that there are some maybe that I didn't hit, well, then you just move on to the next piece and you make sure to focus on those things on the next piece plus
Mm-hmm.
the other things. So, yeah, and with social media, I mean, like I said, you may not always get that reasoning. You may get the like, but you may not get the reason why they like it.
Mm-hmm.
But every now and then you do.
Yeah,
And when you do, you greatly appreciate it.
for sure.
And yeah, like you said, there's times when you have complete strangers that will send you a message and be like, hey, I really like your work or whatever. And it can lead to opportunities. I've been a part of shows because of what I've chosen to post on social media,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And so, yeah, there's good and bad in everything.
Right.
So,
Yeah, and then just to add on also to what Ashley said about people stealing your works, it can be an issue for sure.
yes.
People are real good at copy paste. You put a watermark on it, they're real good at fixing and getting rid of it. It's just it's a difficult thing to not get your works uh, taken, but at the same time, you have proof that you created it, hopefully, and at the same time, you know, it just happens. It's just that is the risk you put with selling your stuff and
Yeah.
or putting your stuff out there. And I think one cool thing, at least on uh, TikTok and Instagram, I believe that people are really good at trying to make sure people know who the original creator was, whether it was just a popular trending post or whatever. Um, People are really pretty good at it. Sometimes they're not. They're really bad at it. But some people do call out when people are trying to take credit for other people's stuff. And I think that's really
Hmm.
cool that people are banding together in that sense. So
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And
for sure.
it is one of those things where that is the risk that you take in a virtual setting.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, I guess for me, I wouldn't let that stop you from opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
And so what I do sometimes, and sometimes you can see it, sometimes you can't. But what I do is I take my image and I have a little stencil of my signature on Photoshop, and I'll hide it somewhere in the piece.
Oh, cool.
And so then what ends up happening is if someone were to claim it as their own, I'd say, well, where's your signature? And they may say, well, it's here. And I go, but what's this in the corner here? Or what's
Mm-hmm.
that? That's my signature. And, of course, like you said as well, if you have the physical object itself,
Mm-hmm.
then you just have way more credibility added to your cause there.
Right.
So, there is risk, but at the same
Mm-hmm.
time, I think there's also there's ways to minimize your
Mm-hmm.
risk. And so it's just finding out what works best for you.
For sure. Yeah. And just to end this real quick, yeah, think about back then. There were forgers. And they didn't have internet. They didn't have social media. And they made millions off of those things. Like, they can do it, you know, even
Yeah,
without
no,
it, even without internet, they can do it. Let's get real, or take it to somebody who can do it.
yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. I mean, the Mona Lisa, we don't know if it's the real Mona Lisa
Yeah,
hanging in the Louvre, you
yeah.
know? Not to get too, like, conspiratorial here, but, you know, there's always someone who's going to pose that question of the authenticity,
For
you
sure.
know? And so, and actually, speaking of authenticity, though, you know, you were talking about showing your face and stuff like that. An artist that no one has ever seen his face
Mhm.
before, Banksy.
Yeah.
You know, Banksy is someone that we don't know who Banksy is, or at least some people think they do.
Yeah.
They may have snagged a picture of a guy in a hood, and they think it's him. But, you know, at the same time, there's this mystique, and it lends itself to the work, because now not only is the work out there for people to see, but now there's this mystery character. And we're trying to figure out, who is this Banksy guy, you know? So you can turn it into a game if you wanted to as well, you know? So.
It's really cool. All right. Wow, I spent a lot of time on one question. That's what we do, though.
Yeah, no, I mean, listen, if because sometimes I can ramble on, so let me know if I need to, like.
This is called monologues for a reason.
Oh, okay,
'Cause I
perfect.
ramble. I have to edit myself down so many times sometimes because I'm like,
Oh, yeah.
I went off topic, because that's what I do. So Martin's nodding his head because I do it with him. Okay. All right. So next question is: do you prefer Gallery World, or do you get? Oh, I can't read today. I told you. All right. Do you prefer the Gallery World to get your work out there, or is it more of a stepping stone to another path? And basically, where do you want your career to go? Again, another response from Ashley was, I love to see my work on the walls, galleries, homes, businesses. That's my favorite. I would say it's never ending staircase to the next big thing. As far as where she wants her career to go, she wants to be able to keep creating, doing what she loves, working for herself. She chose art because it makes her genuinely happy. This is a world that we get to create for ourselves, and she's just happy to keep doing what she loves, because at that point it wouldn't feel like work, but just joy, which I think is great. I'm glad that somebody can find joy in what they do, and I know we have that thing. I guess we kind of, well, I didn't say all of us, but most of us grew up with the idea that, go to school, get a job, whatever that path may be, especially, and just having something that keeps us stable. But at the same time, we may be stable in terms of money, but are we something dropped? But are we stable mentally? Are we stable how we feel with our lives? And are we loving what we do with our lives? And so
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, and it comes down when she says, it gives her joy. That's probably one of the biggest things with, I guess, living a life, right? Joseph Campbell, a mythologist and philosopher who I've been studying for a few years now, and George Lucas, he kind of mentored George Lucas and helped him with the ideas of Star Wars and stuff like that, which has a huge impact on me. Anyways, that's a whole other thing. But Joseph Campbell has a quote that says, "Follow your bliss." And so whatever you choose to do for money may not ultimately get you what you want in life. What you want is you want to feel alive, right? And the only way that you want to feel alive is by waking up every morning and not feeling like life is a chore, but life is a journey. And you are constantly wanting to see where the journey goes. And so as an artist, I mean, like she said, you create your world. And so kind of harking back to what I said earlier, we're storytellers. Well, now here's your opportunity to tell your story, and you can tell it in any fashion that you want. You know, if you want to use the terms of cinematography, if you want to make it a documentary, you can make it a documentary. If you want to make it a comedy, you can make it a comedy. If you want to make it a horror, great. Whatever you see fit for telling your story,
Right.
you know, as long as you feel there's just this inner yearning that gets you up, uh, you know, in the middle of the night or whatever, and says you need to do this.
Right.
There's something very, very powerful there, and I don't think you should necessarily turn that off. You know, I understand that there are people in all different sorts of circumstances, you know, in terms of what may, and you have to be practical sometimes, and I get that. But I don't believe in putting your dreams on hold, you know.
Mm-hmm.
You should always, I mean, you never know how much time you're granted, you know, to exist here. So use every waking hour that you can to uh, to make your dreams come true and do what you need to do.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and if money comes along with it, great. But
Right.
I don't think that should be the goal. You know, the problem with that is, again, you once you get it, it's almost like getting the likes. Once you get it, you keep wanting to get more.
Right.
And when you don't get more, you get disappointed. And then you start to become afraid. Why am I not getting more?
Mm-hmm.
And then you start going down this whole tumbleweed of just fear and trying to just pull things together. But I think if you ground yourself and say, okay, this is my path, this is what I want to do, and regardless of whether it, you know, I get a lot of money for it or whatever, if
Mm-hmm.
it makes me feel alive and it helps people, you know, in some ways, then why would I deny myself of that happiness?
Right.
So
For sure. And I think that's the thing too. Just going back to, like, you know, we all have different ways that we basically want our art to go, our career to go, I guess you could say, or even if we don't have it as a career, but maybe we sell it on the side. I know some people do that instead of having it as their full-time job. Maybe it's more part-time, or they turn it from part-time to full-time later, depending on how, you know, things turn out in their life.
mhm.
But I think, you know, also talking about like the galleries and homes of business, putting your art in someone's home or in a gallery to be shown, you know, I think she does that, you do that. I know like Justin does that. And does he do it much more or as much as he used to, or?
He still does a little bit, you know,
Okay.
just kind of depending on the circumstances, but you know, he juggles back and forth between the
Okay.
two.
Because I know, like, you know, with him, he started with that, but maybe he's going toward something a little different because he does print, and print can be sold a little bit easier than maybe a painting or a photograph in a frame, and etc. You know, it's everything has its market, so to speak. Everyone has its audience, and when it comes
Yeah.
to, like, he does printmaking, it's something a little bit more of a, I guess, everyday thing that normal people would want. um yeah, and I think that's the other thing is, like you said, you know, wanting to do the kind of work you do and how you do it and how you tell your story, I think is important also, because I think some people who get stuck in, like, I'm not selling my work, I'm not selling anything, I'm nobody's liking my stuff. um they kind of get caught up in, I might as well make stuff that people will like instead of something I like. And
Yeah.
I think I got caught in that personally for a little bit, but then I was like, nope, it's not me. I do my weird photographs. I put my weird things out there, and people think it's just weird to be weird, but it it's part of me going through shit all the time. It's always something that happens in my life, and I want to make it into something new, you know. And I think you've done that with your work as well. And whether you have explained it or not, when I ask you about it, you know, I'm just like, and of course we always do that thing with each other. Well, what do you think it means? You know, I don't want to tell you what do
Yeah.
you think it
Yeah.
means, but just, you know, it
Yeah.
allows us to think, you know, and or just not even think, just give our own interpretations of what we're seeing. And but yeah.
Yeah. That there's a whole philosophy involved with that, but yeah, I think like the thing with, you know, getting caught up in is it going to get this many likes? Is it going to sell? All that sort of stuff. It is very easy to fall into that trap. And I remember back in high school, we had this competition that we would do every year.
Mm-hmm.
And my junior year, like, I went on to state and everything, and it was awesome. And when I came back for my senior year, my art teacher was like, okay, you're going to try and go for round 2? And I was like, I don't know. We'll see what happens. So she told me, she was like, what are you thinking about focusing on? Because for my senior year, it was portfolio class.
Mm.
And so we had to pick a subject, something to focus on. And I went with, at the time, I couldn't really think of anything. And so she threw out ideas. She was like, if you do pets, if you drew dogs and stuff like that, then people really like that stuff. Wink, 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 nudge, nudge, nudge.
Yeah.
And so I was like, yeah, but that bores me.
Yeah.
I'm not really that kind of person. So I ended up doing a bunch of aliens and monsters.
Mm-hmm.
And probably not my strongest work, but it was fun nonetheless. And it allowed me to access parts of my imagination that I've been wanting to access for so long. And so, and so that's where it's like, do I follow with the mainstream stuff, or do I find my own voice in this crowd of birds?
Yeah.
And so I think it's important to find out who you are as a person first,
Mm-hmm.
and act from there. Because as I've found out over the years, there's always an audience for something. Mm-hmm. Even if you don't think someone's going to like totally understand your work or whatever, someone out there does. Mm-hmm. And someone loves it. And so if you continue to act from that center of, this is who I am, this is what I feel, this is the story I want to tell, then you will find that audience. It may take a month, it may take a couple years. Nonetheless, if you continue to just stick with it because you're passionate about it, and because you can't see yourself doing anything else, I think that is the most important thing for anyone to do, especially in this day and age sometimes where it feels like it can be very linear in terms of it's A or B, and it's like, well, I like the letter Q. Can I do Q?
Right.
So.
Yeah, and I think just going back to, I think I know what contrast you're talking about, because I think we all did it. And I went to state one year, and I went with them to Austin, Houston, one of those places. And I was excited. I was like, Mom, I'm going to this thing, and it's really fun. And she's like, okay, cool. I'm excited for you. And so I went with them on the trip. And I didn't realize when we got there that we weren't all just getting a recognition. It was people who went on to the next round got the recognition with a pretty little medal. And I was just the only one in my entire group who didn't get called up. I didn't get any recognition with a little medal. And I called my mom crying, completely upset. And looking back on it, I'm just like, it's funny that I cried over this little piece of metal that I guess validates you being a good artist in high school, and it's funny because I just don't remember what piece it was, but I remember looking back at it and being like, why did I draw this? And it's like terrible. I hate it. And I think that was the thing, is they liked it. They liked the subject matter, but I didn't. And then all my weird stuff that I liked never got picked. It never got any recognition from anybody. But I liked it, and my mom and dad put it up in their house too, and because they were like, "It's your weird shit. We like it, so hey." But I still come home, and they go, "You never show us your work." Okay, I show you my work. They're like, "What is this?" And I'm just like, "It's my work. It's my art." And then I try to explain it. They're like, "I don't get it." It's like, you don't have to.
Yeah.
You don't have to get it. You don't have to put it on your wall. I'm not going to make you. It's up to you. But in the end, I felt good about it, and I felt like it got my message out, even if it's only being seen by like 5 people, as opposed to 5,000 people. So
I think the word that I kept trying to find, because I kept struggling I said social something. The word that I keep mispronouncing, or rather misusing, that I want to use now is social validation.
Mm.
Do you seek social validation?
Mm-hmm.
And as opposed to a personal, where it doesn't matter what they think, it matters what I think about my own work. And if I find that my work hit the note, then great. Now it's time to move on to the next thing. And whatever anyone else thinks, that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
Not to get too philosophical with it, I guess, but there's a Stoic philosopher named Epictetus, and he talked about how if you take life and you divide it up into two columns, let's just say for the sake of conversation, two columns. You have column A and you have column B. Column A are the things that we are in control of. Column B are the things we are not in control of. The only two things that fall under column A of what I can control are my thoughts and my actions.
Mm-hmm.
Everything else is in column B,
Right.
And so when you realize that, then you go, okay, maybe, let's where am I standing with all of this? And then you just kind of go from there, and it's a conversation you have with yourself
Right.
daily almost, so.
And I think, it's a good thing to talk about that on this podcast too, because, I love talking about mental health, and I think that's a big thing. I always want to reiterate when it comes to mental health, just know that it sounds like I'm being an asshole when I say it, but it's like, you're not in control. You're in control of yourself, but you can't control people. You can't control the situation. Shit just happens. And it just matters how you react to it and how you handle it. And you can handle it badly for a minute, but then get right back up and push forward. That's all you have to do. And it sucks sometimes, but you have that strength to do it. You just have to find it.
Yeah.
And so, hey, get philosophical. Get philosophical.
Yeah.
Can't think of words. Get philosophical on this podcast, dude. I love it.
Yeah. I mean, it's life. Life is, if you treat life like a game,
Mm-hmm.
and if you ever play a video game, there's days where you're doing really well, and there's days when you don't do so well.
Yeah.
That's fine, because then you just hit the respawn button, and you go again, and you just keep going and you're going. But the point, I think, is to have fun. As long as you have fun doing it, then nothing can stop you.
For sure.
So, anyways.
Awesome. All right, dude. This is your question, actually. How do you define talent, or do you believe in it? And before I read the the answers that I've gotten from some people, it's funny because we've had this discussion with you and with Martin, and just how you guys feel about talent. And I was like, man, I've never thought of it that way, because to me, it's just a general thought about, we say we're talented. And so what Justin said, he's our friend Justin. He's founder of Scavenger Prints. Oh, by the way, let me add that I'm going to be putting everybody who responded, I'm going to put all the links to their Instagrams and social media in the description. And yeah, so just letting you guys know, so I'm not just like, these are random people. But yes, this is Justin. This is Justin from Scavenger Prints. I definitely think talent, quote unquote, is subjective. In my eyes, it's more about skill and execution in one's craft, and that makes the work speak for itself rather than just making a bunch of stuff because it has qualities people find attractive, which we just talked about too. And then Brandon Pittman, Brandon Screams into Oblivion on Instagram. Talent to him can either be a natural inclination or the outcome of an enormous amount of work to do something that only a percentage of the population can do with their body or mind. That's very true. I do think there's some things in art you can definitely learn. I think anybody can learn those things, but it's also a matter of where is it coming from? Is it coming from something people like and put online, especially like we see those trends where people do like spinning paintings or drippy paintings. Anyone can do that, but where do you, where did that come from originally? Who put that mind out or that mindset out originally, and why did they do it as opposed to just doing it for a craft, you know? And there's also that question of what's art and what's craft kind of thing, and there's always been that back and forth with it. So
Yeah. Yeah, I think the word that Justin used that I think nailed it was subjective.
mm-hmm.
You know, um, my philosophy on talent, as we've discussed numerous times before,
Mm-hmm.
I don't particularly like the or use the word talent.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't say I necessarily believe in the word talent, at least in the sense, in the connotative sense that it's used, where because I've had it before where people go, "Oh, you're so talented,"
Mm-hmm.
which is a compliment, and I greatly appreciate it. However, it's followed up sometimes with, "I wish I could do what you do," or even worse, "I can't do what you do." And to me, when I hear that, I go, "No," because that to me speaks messages of a pedestal.
Mm-hmm.
There's a hierarchical thing going on here, and it's I'm up here and you're down here, which is not the case at all. With talent, I'm standing on the same ground as you, right? And so where I got through three things, at least three general things that I've come to use as my, I guess, my playing card for talent.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there are three general things. One is passion. The second is determination. And the third is discipline.
Mm-hmm.
So passion is the drive. It's the fire. It's the thing that makes you get up in the middle of the night, no matter if it's snowing or raining, and you just have to do it, whatever it is, you know, and you enjoy it. You enjoy every ounce of it, and you can't see your life without it. So that's passion, right? That's the fire. Then you have determination. And determination can sometimes be associated with stubbornness. I'm going to get this done no matter what.
Yeah.
If it is snowing, who cares? If it's raining cats and dogs, I'll pick them up as I go along, you know? So determination is the act of preparing yourself to do it. And it's this stubbornness of you're not going to let anything stand in your way, right? Then you have discipline, which is the actual act of sitting down
Mm-hmm.
and doing it. And those three things to me make up the word talent.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, not that every single time someone comes up to me and says, "Oh, you're so talented," I'm going to be like, "Listen here," you know, I'm not that kind of person. Time to sit down and talk. I like to explain that process because you could do that with just about anything, right? There are, for instance, I have a friend who she actually said that to me, "You're so talented," and so on and so forth. And I gave her that whole spiel, the whole conversation. And she went, "You're right." And I said, "There's something that you are incredibly good at that I'm probably terrible at." And she
Mm-hmm.
goes, "Well, I really, really like to cook." And I said, "Great. I barely can make a bowl of cereal." You know? So, but you have this passion to do it, and she loves to do it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so I could easily, if I sit down one day and decide, you know what, I have the passion to cook, which
Mm-hmm.
I've been trying to get into lately, you
Right.
know? And so it's one of those things where if I sit down, I just go, you know what, let me check off these three things. Do I have the passion to make a good meal? Yeah, I feel like having a good meal today.
Mm-hmm.
Do I have the determination to be like, you know what, I'm going to do it? Sure. Then I just have to do it,
Yeah.
you know? And so those things make up talent. And I've had
Right.
conversations with other friends about talent, some that have been incredible, but they all lean towards those things, those
Mm-hmm.
three things for me. And so that's kind of where my mind goes when I hear talent.
Right. And I agree. I think just going back to like when you're like, yeah, you may be so good at something like cooking, so much better than I am, go with that. And it's funny because you're like, I can barely make a bowl of cereal, and of course the non-artist, so to speak, non-artist response I always get is, "Oh, you're so talented. I can barely draw stick figures." I'm like, just circle, line,
Right.
it's not that hard.
Yeah.
And I think of course they're just trying to make a point, like, you're so good, and it's just like,
Mm.
and it makes you feel a little bit more awkward when they say that thing. But
Yeah.
you know.
Well, and something, there's an artist when I was a kid, an illustrator named Matt Bush, who I still follow to this day, and he's done a lot of stuff for Star Wars and all that. So of course I'm like hook, line, and sinker. But he said something really interesting in an interview because someone asked him a very similar question: "Do you believe in talent?"
Mm-hmm.
And his words, just to kind of paraphrase what he said, was, there's people that'll disagree with me on this, and that's fine. But um, for him, he doesn't believe in the word talent because it's not like you came out of the womb with a
Right.
paper and pencil
Right.
and said, "Look, Mom, look what I can do."
Yeah.
There's a lot of hours and a lot of blood, sweat, and tears sometimes that you have to
Mm-hmm.
put into it. And so if you can make it a game,
Right.
just going back to like the whole life thing, if you can make it a game, make it fun to where, it's enjoyable, then you can do just about anything that you want.
Right.
And I teach painting at Painting with a Twist.
Mm-hmm.
And, I get people that come in and they go, I can barely, same thing, I can barely draw a stick figure.
Mm-hmm.
And I go, well, it's a good thing we're not drawing stick figures tonight, as a joke. But I tell them, listen, this is not a magic trick. You're going to get through this just as I do, and you're going to make something awesome,
Right.
And so there's a level of confidence that you can instill in a person to help them. And yeah, I think the big thing is just as long as it's fun and as long as you don't worry about what it looks like, it's more about what you feel, then I think you can make just about anything that you want. So
yeah, and I think it's I just think it's interesting too. Like earlier, you talked about like the hierarchy, like you're up here, I'm up here, and I when I met my roommate. She was like, "You do art?" I go, "Yeah, I do mostly photography, and then I like doing print stuff." She goes, "I'm not an artist, but I like doing art," and I just thought it was interesting. She said that, and she showed me like one of her paintings. She showed Martin too when he came over, and she's like, I like art because she put up his work, and then I think your painting that you gave me, and she's like, I can't do it like that, but I do like kind of kitty fun stuff, and she showed us a painting she did, and we were like, no, it's cool, like it's wonderful, like and she's like, no, we're like, yeah, it's like it's your style. You don't have to look like super realistic like Martin does or super detailed like you do. You do very, very detailed small things, but you practice that, you worked with that, and Martin likes to do really, really realistic body shape and stuff like that. He really likes to focus on the proportions and stuff like that. And it's like, yeah, we study it and we work really hard with it, but at the same time, if it's something you love to do, which she obviously does because she wants to put a little art area in our main room, it's like, well, then just do that. Just go for it. Even if it's not your major, just go for it. Like I'm always here to do stuff, and so yeah, I do think talent just generalizes maybe a little too much for I guess anything. It doesn't even have to be art, but it just kind of generalizes for anything or anything people like to do and like you said are passionate about. There's so many different levels, I guess you could say, but without trying to be like one's better than the other. It's so hard to
it's all completely subjective,
sure.
just as Justin said. It's funny because people will go to art museums, and it's interesting just to hear, if you ever go to an art museum and you can hear conversations, and you're in one area, let's say you're in the contemporary section, and you hear all these people about talking how profound this abstract painting is, but you may look at it and go, I mean, I guess I see what you're saying. If you go with an open mind, you can go, yeah, I see what you're saying. But at the same time, there's nothing wrong with having a preference.
Right.
Because then what you may end up doing is you may end up going to, say, the Greco-Roman era, and you may go, what? Like you were just completely taken away, And so while you have an appreciation for this over here, this is where your mind is at all the time. And it changes because then you'll go into, say, the Greek and Roman era, and you'll hear someone go, I'm just not a big fan of this kind of art, and it's like, that's fine. That's your opinion. It's all subjective,
Right.
Right. And so to be like, well, this is true art or something like that, I don't know if there ever really is a true answer to that.
Yeah.
You know? So I think it's totally just about, it's more of a personal or an individual choice than anything else.
For sure. I am curious what you think about what Anthony responded. It says Anthony Runblade. He said, I'd say talent only gets you 1/4 of the way there, or to anywhere you're looking to arrive in life. I believe in talent, but not so much as I believe in delusional persistence in whatever your endeavors may be. But more than delusional persistence, I believe in a stable form of external support, a rational understanding of your expectations, and a locomotive spirit that feeds on spite.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to, I guess, unpack there, but sure, I think in terms of where that conversation is going, I think there's a level of, you can have the talent and stuff like that, but is there a practicality to it, right? And I think the answer is yes, there's a practicality to it. There always is. But it's a matter of, are you doing it for the practical reason, or are you doing it for the passionate reason, the spiritual reason, or whatever, whatever you see fit for why you're doing it. And so, this idea of delusional persistence, because I have the answers pulled up here. A delusional persistence in whatever your endeavor may be. I think there does come a point maybe where maybe there's times when you do question, your endeavor. You do question, is this really what I want to do? I can think of a number of times when I kind of was taken aback and I was like, do I really, really want to do this? And here's an interesting story, actually. So I just got out of high school. I'm getting ready to start at San Antonio College, and Jerry's Artorama, the art store, just opened up here in San Antonio, and they were going to have a art fest. So bring out all the artists, pitch a tent, sell your work, get your exposure out there, stuff like that. I thought, cool. So there was a part of me that really wanted to do it. So I went. I didn't make it the first time, but the second time they did it, I signed up and I got my spot. And I spent all this money and stuff like that. I got a tent, I got a table, I got prints made of my work and stuff like that. And I thought, oh man. And there was just this part of me that was riding high on my ego. I'm going to sell out. I'm going to do everything. So we stood out there, my dad and I, we were out there for about 8 hours in the blazing hot sun of, Texas weather. And we end up packing up everything at the end of the day. The day goes by and we pack up everything. We're putting in my car. And I remember counting through my money that I made that day, because I still had prints and stuff left over. And I don't remember the exact dollar amount. It was probably like $80 or $90, which should be grateful just to get that in general. But because I was riding so high on my expectations, I kind of was disappointed. And I remember my dad was like, so how much did you make? And I told him, and he was like, you sound a little disappointed by that. I said, well, a little bit. And he goes, it's fine. I mean, you can be upset about it, but at the same time, like, why are you doing this? Ask yourself that question. Why am I doing this? Am I doing it for money, or am I doing it because it's what I really want to do with my life? And so that to me was a very defining moment for me, and always trying to keep myself in check with my endeavors. Is there a delusion to it? That's when you have to sit down and have that discussion with yourself. And as long as you are able to establish a center from which you act out of, then you will be able to make that decision very, very clearly. And it's just a matter of checking in with yourself daily and saying, okay, yeah, this is how I feel today. And, now for me, it's all about the story. I keep always going back to story. And what I end up doing is I'm like, you know what? I just got to get this story out there. I can't sleep because I have this story going on in my head all the time, and so while to some it may seem delusional, for me, it is all practical.
Yeah.
You know, it kind of comes back to that subjectivity, you know, of what is right and what is, you know, what's the right thing to do and what's maybe not the questionable thing to do.
Right.
So, yeah, I think it becomes, again, a very individual case.
Yeah, and I think a lot of us kind of deal with the hardships when people are like, it's not exactly rational, or it's that delusional idea of what do you want to create and what you want to do, I guess, with your career as well. And especially from some of our parents. I know your parents are very supportive of you and what you want to do for sure. My parents are supportive, but there's also this other half where, of course, they want me to make sure I'm doing well for myself, and they want me to support myself.
Right. Yeah.
And of course, they're parents, and they, at the same time, they're like, we want to support, but we also
Yeah.
want you to, and it's like,
you want the best for your
right,
child.
for sure.
Yeah.
And I've had friends who have had no support from their parents, or very little support, and they're like, yeah, we'll give you money for school, but get through it and go get a job, and it's just like, I don't want to get through it. I want to be educated, and I want to start my career somehow. Or maybe they go do an internship, and it's like, I may need your help with some bills, and stuff like that, because it takes up some time. And same when I got my internship, my dad immediately was like, cool, does it pay? And it's just like, no, but I have no experience in this field and I need it. And maybe one day I will get to a point where I can get paid for whatever. And even if that's not my end goal, it's a starting point, and yeah, there's a lot of there's a lot of things when you can talk about delusional persistence for sure when it comes to being an artist.
Yeah. And there's always that level of hesitation.
Mm-hmm.
There's the practicality factor, can I make money? Can I make a living off of this? But again, maybe for me, it's just, maybe I have that dreaming mentality or something like that, but don't do it for the sake of money.
Right.
Because you'll probably end up disappointing yourself. I love what, I keep bringing up like actors and stuff like that, but Jim Carrey. Jim Carrey says something. Yeah, Jim Carrey says something very interesting at a high school graduation, or not high school, excuse me, it was a college university graduation, and he gave a speech, and he said, I want everyone in the world to work hard and get the things that they desire, just to realize it's not what they wanted.
Yeah.
And I think there is a level of logic there. Is the things that you so desire, are they really what you want? The whole question of want versus need. What's the difference there?
For sure.
And I can think of a number of times I've listened to this George Lucas. I sent you a link. I can't remember, it was a couple years ago, of this speech that George Lucas gave at a university, and he talked about the ideas of joy versus pleasure. And when it comes to pleasure, you're talking about pleasure is something that is sort of a self-centered, like I want more.
Mm-hmm.
And so, it ends up spiking and dropping. It's a high, and you keep wanting to get more with pleasure, right? And so you'll think, if I could just buy, 2 more Ferraris and a private jet and stuff like that, maybe I can relive that emotional experience when I bought my first car.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, well, you may not actually get that feeling back, but joy, very much like what Ashley was talking about, joy is something that lasts with you forever. Mm-hmm. And maybe it doesn't peak as much as pleasure, but it's this steady flow that you just feel, I guess, at peace, and you feel this just over resounding like confidence with yourself and your decisions and stuff like that. So yeah, I think that's where it's like, if you learn to, I completely forgot where I was going with this, but I guess the gist that I'm trying to get at is, it's okay to think in practicality. It's okay to think in terms of, can I survive and stuff like that. But also at the same time, there also is this mentality of, can I, or am I living a happy life?
Right.
Yeah.
And I think I want to go to Jenna Marble's she got 2 degrees, and I don't remember, what exactly they were. I know one of them was in like sports medicine, and because she loves sports. Really, my boyfriend is burping like crazy today.
I know. Tell him 8 out of 10. Would try again.
Dante says 8 out of 10 would try again. He's just like.
Give him a minute. Give him a minute.
He'll only interrupt when I'm speaking. Anyway. But yeah, just going back to Jenna, and she went to school for 8 years, got her master's, and why am I here? Why am I here recording this? She got her master's, and of course she's like one of the, biggest top YouTubers in the entire world. And it's just, and of course we know she's decided to stop because of, mental health reasons, and that's great. I think that's good for her. But at the same time, she started out just doing it for fun, and then, learned she could make money out of it. And then she did. And she's like, I'm going to keep going because this is fun to me. And, she continually changed over the years as she grew and matured, of course. And of course, changing her lifestyle. And, I guess also with Julian, who wanted to do those kind of things as well. And it's really interesting that she has that life. And then I also watch Simply Neological, Christine from Simply Neological, and she has a full-time job with the government because she went to school and wanted to do criminal justice, and then she eventually started. She does like daily reports in government of Canada on crime reports and stuff like that. And then people always ask her, why don't you just leave your job? You make so much more money on YouTube than you do with your job. And she goes, because I feel normal at work. This isn't normal. This isn't everyday me. It's a fun thing to do, but it's also like, it's not that it's not me, but it's not sort of a character I do to entertain you guys. And there's nothing wrong with that. But at the same time, I don't do it for the money. I do it because I love to do it. I didn't know where it would go. And apparently it's gone to millions of followers and views. And now I have my own nail company. And then even then people now are like, why don't you leave still? And she goes, because I love it. I love it so much. And then I do also mention she had a video with her boss one time from her daily job. And she even, what people I guess would consider a practical job, a practical boss, she even was like, dreams can change all the time. Not just ideas about jobs or anything, but dreams can change. And I thought that was really cool that she said that. And she's like, you don't have to stick with anything at all, but as long as you have a plan to start, that's all you need. And then you just keep working. And I was like, that's coming from someone maybe you'd never think would ever say something like that. Someone who's part of that structural system of work,
Yeah.
So I thought that was really cool to hear that from her.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
All right. Yeah, we monologue, dude. We like the monologue.
Give me a part 2.
Oh yeah. This is also your question. How does someone become more creative? We have a few responses here. So Anthony's response, his first funny response was fake your death and slowly burrow your way back into the lives of your friends and family as a completely new individual. Might be the best practice for this. And I was like, oh my gosh, this guy. So his real response, though, you either have a way to channel it or you don't. If you can channel it, you have to challenge its limits. And if you can't channel it, you have to learn how to remind the world that creativity is nothing without a means of communicating to an audience in a way that is coherent and understandable. And then moving to Brandon's answer, he said creativity is so fickle but rejuvenating. Some of us are born with a more direct path to the manifesting current, and some of us have a harder time sustaining with that connection. I suppose to become more creative, you have to be willing to move your mind around your subjects in new ways, turn over new rocks, get your hands dirty, and juxtapose what you think you know is real about a subject with a fictitious new background. Combine words and pictures and say, you know, I can hear all this. Oh my gosh. Sorry.
You're good.
Combine,
You got this, Alyssa.
combine words and pictures in the blender that is your brain until, like a cup of coffee, it not only warms you in the chest, but it hits you in the center of your head, and that's where you build from. That's a lot. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, the whole idea of, like with what Brandon was saying, the juxtaposition, and you hit this idea and it fills your whole body, right? That's, I guess, going back to talent, that's the passion. It's that fire, right? And so, yeah, for me, because I've had people, especially when I teach at Painting with a Twist, I have people that go, how do I become more creative? And I tell them, you already are. You just don't always recognize it or see it, you know? And a clear indication that anyone and everyone is a creative person is when you go to sleep at night and you have dreams. And a lot of the times you have dreams that sometimes just don't make any sense,
Yeah.
but when you're there, you just take it all in and you're along for the ride. And you're like, okay, great. So creativity is something that's within all of us. The difficult part is to try and dream while we're awake, right? And so the whole idea of what Brandon was talking about with the juxtapositions and stuff like that, it's interesting because I remember I had a friend who was saying to me one time, she said, I wish I was a little bit more creative and fantastical, kind of like the way your work is, blah, 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 blah. And I told her, I said, well, it's easy. I said, first of all, there's no rules here, right? There's no rules. There's guidelines that you can follow if you want. But for the sake of the chaos of the universe, let's just say it's chaotic right now. There's no rules.
Mm-hmm.
Let's take two things that you wouldn't necessarily put together and let's see what happens. So I said, let's start off with a place. What's a place that you would love to visit? And she said, well, I like to visit the swamps in Louisiana, out in the bayou and stuff like that. I said, okay, so picture the bayou. You're in a boat. You're in this murky water that has moss and algae. You have these gigantic trees growing out. There's a little bit of a fog and everything. Maybe it's mysterious, Okay, start with that. Now, let's jump gears and let's think of an animal. What's an animal that you don't associate with the bayou, but is an animal that you just really, really would like to see and meet? And she goes, an elephant. I said, okay, so let's put an elephant in the bayou. What does the elephant do? Does it swim? Does it walk up the trees? Is there gravity in this bayou? Let's just throw out a bunch of hypotheticals. And you just keep playing that game of what if, until finally maybe you hit something that goes, oh, I like that. Let's keep going with that. So there's that little spark, right? And you can choose to fan the flames and make it bigger if you want, just by allowing your mind to go there. And so, yeah, I think a lot of the times it's just you have to be able to take your mind sometimes off of the reality and put it in a realm that doesn't make sense, that's imaginative and is something that you see in your dreams. And while it doesn't make sense, it feels real when you're there, right? So I think it's just having to be able to turn off that part of your brain that says, no, that logically that doesn't make sense, and go, you know what? Why not? Let's put whales in space. Why not? So, and then you figure out the logic from there if you want.
Mm-hmm. No,
So.
I absolutely agree. And honestly, that's something I said, I think, since maybe high school. Because I think I just got to a point in high school too where I was just like, fuck everybody. So it wasn't the greatest time. But, I was just like, why not? And even though it started out kind of a little bit as a spiteful, maybe negative thing, it turned into more of a positive thing for me. And it was just like, why not? And that happens a lot with my parents personally, where they're like, why'd you make this? Or why'd you do this? And it's like, why not?
Yeah.
There's no reason not to,
Mm-hmm.
and I think there's very little times I can say that there is a why to it. Or maybe if, the, like we were talking about earlier, the reason you're making something isn't for the sake of making it because you love it. It's to maybe, like, some people are, or some artists will make something shocking for shock value
Yeah.
only, and not to make a statement or not to make a point about anything. It's
Yeah.
just to get attention. And same thing like we do on social media, it's just to get attention sometimes, and it ends up getting attention, but at what cost? Like the cost of just likes.
Mm-hmm.
If it's making a statement politically, socially, whatever, or just to tell your story, like we've been talking about, I think that's great. But when it's just to, you know, show off something that doesn't matter, it goes beyond the why not. And it's just like, why do people do this, and why do people care to like it at all?
Yeah.
And I think that's where we get stuck sometimes too, in that trap where we're just like, you can like that, but not, not even our shit, but you can't like this wonderful artist shit. You can't like this, it's insane how the world works. But I think at the same time, we just gotta, you know, put all that aside and just say, for our work, why not? Let's do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's times where it's, I guess the word that comes to mind for me is the word transcendent.
Mm.
It's transcendent of understanding. And so when you are putting things together and you go, I like the way this looks, but I can't necessarily put my finger down on why.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's not even important to answer that question why. I guess it goes back to the saying everything happens for a reason, right?
Right.
And you may not know why. In fact, sometimes you may never get to the answer of why, but it's there for a reason.
Yeah.
And so you put those things together on a canvas, or you decided to compile your images in this format. Why? Well, I don't know if I can really answer why, but it just feels right. And I can't describe it any other way than that. And when you tap into that, that's when art kind of becomes this, I guess, for a lack of a better term, it becomes a spiritual journey, you know, and you end up uh, just trying to, you can't make sense of it, but it's transcendent of your own understanding, and you're not going to question that. You're just going to go,
Mm-hmm.
you know what? Let's just roll with it. Let's see what happens.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that uh, there's times when maybe you want to, like, if I guess for in the case of rules,
Mm-hmm.
because like I said, there's good and bad with everything.
Mm-hmm.
In the case of rules, sometimes rules are nice because they challenge you. So for instance, if I'm like right now, I guess a series that I'm working on, um, there's times when I want to put maybe a tree in there somewhere, but I've already made it a rule with this series, I can't put a tree in the painting. Why is that? Well, I'm not going to tell you why, but I have my reason why, you know? And so, but there's times when you bestow those challenges upon you,
Mm-hmm.
then it helps you become more creative, because then you go, oh, okay, well, if I can't put that there, what can I put there? What doesn't break that rule, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So it's all about perspective and how you want to play the game, so to speak. Keep saying that a lot, but you know what I mean. So
So I guess, well, what does that mean to you though, playing the game? Because when I hear playing the game, it's that shitty thing where it's like, I can stick a banana on the wall with duct tape and sell it for thousands of dollars because I know somebody who can get my name out there, and other people may think of it a different way. So I'm
yeah,
curious what you think that means to you.
to playing the game.
Yeah.
So for me, playing the game is again, going, I guess, down the road of philosophy, when you start talking about the ideas of playing the game, there is this notion that sometimes we have to take things in life very seriously,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And the problem with taking things so seriously sometimes is that we forget how to live, and it can cause problems for us. It can build up our anxieties, it can make us fearful, all these sorts of things. But for me, if I look at it with maybe not such a seriousness, but rather more of a sincerity,
Mm-hmm.
and I can go, you know, while this may seem bad, it's here for a reason. Let's play with that idea. What is that reason? You know, and when you kind of put it through those ringers, those filters, so to speak, of the game being life is crazy. Life is not this linear thing that we always maybe tend to think of, or maybe that we're told. Life is when I walk outside my door, I don't know what I'm going to run into, but that should make it exciting, right? Life is always changing. And when it's always changing, that means that I'm still here and I get to observe this change. And it's amazing that I get to see this, because now I can use it for the sake of my art.
Mm-hmm.
I can use it for the sake of my understanding of myself in the world around me, you know? And so, what's interesting is you brought up the banana taped to the wall. And the artist who did that, the Italian artist who did that, I looked him up, and I looked at his work, and his work is actually very, very good. He does a lot of hyper realist sculpture. So there was a part of me that thought, why in the world would this artist, who is so renowned for doing this work, why would he tape a banana to a wall? Then a thought crept into my mind that a lot of people have been considering, which is maybe he's trying to do a dialogue on the seriousness that we
Mm-hmm.
take with art. You
Mm-hmm.
know, when Banksy decided to shred his painting
Yeah.
at that auction, I think there was a level of playfulness there to say, why do we bestow such a high value to this stuff? You know, why is there such this seriousness to it? Why can't it just be, why just tape it to the wall and see what happens?
Right.
You know, there's this sort of weird exchange there between how we choose to observe things. Because the funny thing is there were people that went and saw that and they went, oh my, it's so profound. Oh my goodness. But when the internet saw it, the internet went, what? You know? And so it's just this weird psychology that we
Right.
sort of go through. And so I think for me, that's again with the idea of the game being life, this
Mm-hmm.
this joyous thing that we get to experience, for as long as we can. It's just taking in every ounce of information that we can and using it to make ourselves better. So
I do wish I had looked up his work because I didn't know that. I'll look him up.
yeah,
Because I just, I guess it's that thing. I just got stuck on really a banana on the fucking wall. It's no different than when Cantu, our professor, showed us somebody sold invisible art at a gallery for and we're
yeah,
just like, there's nothing there, and
yeah,
he sold it for I think over $1 million. Like it drove us all crazy, but at the same time, like if he's already an artist, if he's a working artist and maybe he's trying to make a statement on something, then I'm all for it. But I just hadn't read anything on the fact that he was doing that. I hadn't seen his other works, so I just got stuck on
yeah.
the banana.
Well, and
um
it could also be just something too, where, because I've kind of proposed my own theories too, of when you start looking at things in terms of your ego.
mhm,
This guy is renowned for his work, and he tapes a banana on the wall, and someone buys it for a ridiculous amount.
mhm.
Now, did they buy it because they thought it was so profound, or did they buy it because of
Yeah,
his name?
right.
Right. And so then there's that dialogue there, and it could be the artist going, I don't take my name so seriously, yet you do, because you find
Mhm,
such value in this. That's interesting. Why
right.
is that? You know? So there's a dialogue right there that you could have with anybody, you know? And so I don't know, it's really, really kind of a weird slippery slope sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Not slippery, pun intended, because of a banana, but you know what I mean. Um, but yeah, it does become sort of this yin and yang,
Yeah.
you know. And so you're trying to balance it out and go, is it this or is it that?
Mm-hmm.
And what do I think is the real deal here?
Yeah.
So
And I guess that also kind of adds on to like when we say an artist's work becomes more famous or I guess well known when they die, and that's kind of like with
mm,
Anthony's funny response, it's just like just fake your death and you'll get a lot of money. So it's just kind of like, well, yeah, like it's odd how these people like I don't know, I can't think of anybody. Maybe Rembrandt, maybe was Michelangelo one. I don't know, but their work wasn't necessarily the most famous work in their country, let alone the world at their time. But once they're
yeah.
gone, it becomes this huge masterpiece. It becomes this huge, well-known thing that we go
Oh,
and see as and for you know it's worth millions of dollars, and it's
yeah.
insane. It's insane. But
Yeah. Van Gogh is one of those artists.
Van Gogh's one of those artists. Yeah, that's for sure.
Yeah. So yeah, he produced a lot of work and never saw the light of day because of him being
Right.
in an institution. And
Mm-hmm.
so because he was condemned to that institution, he couldn't necessarily show his work all the time.
Mm-hmm.
And it was only in his passing when they went through his estate that they went, oh my God, look at these
Mm-hmm.
paintings, you know?
Right.
And so then, yeah, there was a very interesting uh, outcome of events there.
Right.
So,
I think also people are real interested by his story. Like, why did he cut his ear off? Did he really kill himself because it's in the stomach
yeah,
and that's odd? And, yeah, and then there's so many theories, of course, but yeah,
definitely.
I think that adds on
Yeah.
to it. Um, so I did want to ask why you became an artist. I kind of asked that in general on Instagram, and I do want to share Priscilla's, where she says in her situation, she's been more of an artist for her mental well-being. It was a blessing to be in art classes when I was at this point a mother, and I'm still in survival mode and I haven't had enough support to make art. She does pray one day that she can make art all day if she can, regardless of anyone buying it or not. It goes back to her family not encouraging an education at her young age, and she had her first child at 21. She lives with her children. She loves her children, but it hurts not to feel adequate as her own person and abilities and to enjoy her work to support her family. So there's some disappointment there, but she's still alive because of it.
Yeah.
So she feels good. And again, I've always I don't know if I ever want to call myself an advocate for mental health. It just seems I feel pretentious saying it a little bit, because I know like one definition of advocate is you just support it and you try to get it out there. But I think people think advocate as you're a huge, I guess, face for it,
Proponent.
proponent
Yeah.
of it. Yeah, and you know, but I guess that's just a lack of word. I'm a huge advocate for mental health, where I just support mental health, and I think art is one of those things that really gets some people through really difficult things in their life. And I saw a post the other day too, where someone was like, "You guys are complaining about kids not being able to do their sports because of coronavirus, but now you know how it feels when art courses and art programs get cut, funding cuts and stuff like that." And it's like,
Mm,
yes, I can agree. Like, yeah, we don't always get the best support, whether it's in school or maybe grant funding, et cetera, that goes on throughout the art world, as much as sports. But at the same time, I think sports also have that really great thing about them for kids who are in a really difficult situation. I've seen so many stories of kids who use sports to get out their anger or just give them something to do so they're not out there doing what they're expected to do in terms of the neighborhoods they live in, and going out and doing crimes and sorts of things. And I think that's also happened with artists as well. So I think, you know, it doesn't matter what you do, like we've been saying, as long as it gives you joy, that's what matters. And if it helps you with you in terms of mental health and what you go through, I think that's absolutely wonderful. So I know it's like a big broad question, but why are you an artist, Dante?
So I guess to kind of have a timeline here, when I was a kid, my initial dream was to be an astronaut. I wanted to be an astronaut and I wanted to travel the stars. Then my friend who lived across the street from me said, "But what if you run into an alien and it rips your face off?" And that terrified me.
Oh my god!
5-year-old kids. So, that to me kind of shifted and I went, maybe not. So, but I still have all my science books. I have all of my encyclopedia of how to be an astronaut, all that sort of stuff. So I kept that in mind. But then I thought, okay, I really like dinosaurs too as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought about being a paleontologist because I saw Jurassic Park and I saw how cool it was in the beginning of that film, when they're digging the Velociraptor up, and oh yes. So I thought, oh man, I want to do that. And then somewhere along the way, I just kind of, I don't know, I stopped thinking about it because then I started getting more and more into fantasy. Mm-hmm. Then something happened at the age, I was probably about 12 years old. And for Christmas, I got Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. Now, this is why Star Wars is such a huge part of my life.
Yeah.
Okay, so I watched Revenge of the Sith 20 times at that point, right? Then I saw there was a second disc and it had behind the scenes. And I was like, oh, I'm not really a behind the scenes person. Maybe I'll watch it. And there was this one clip that was called, and you can search this on YouTube and stuff like that. It's called Creating General Grievous. Oh, wow. And the entire clip was literally just the art department and what their whole design process was, from conversation to concept to developing this character. And I got to see all the different artists, and I got to see what their workstations were like in this video and stuff like that. And I just remember thinking how magical of an experience that is, to sit down in a room and create something that could be used on the big screen or just in general, just to play such an awesome role, So I thought that was magic. And so from that point on, I set out to be a concept artist. Which changed down the line as I went through school and everything like that. But still, nonetheless, what I ended up discovering, though, was I sort of had this epiphany moment not too long ago where I thought, well, okay, as an artist, I guess the reason why I'm an artist is because as an artist, I can be anything that I want. I can be the astronaut and I can search the stars, right? I can be a paleontologist and dig up the depths of myself, maybe, or the world around me, through my art. So being an artist for me is like the jack of all trades for just trying to understand the world around me. And when you have all of these questions, like you said, when you talk about mental health, and if you're going through a tough time and stuff like that, there was a time where I was going through a tough time, and I woke up one morning and I looked in the mirror and I said, this isn't who you are. And I said, okay, well, I'm dealing with all of these emotions. What's going on here? So then I sat down, I said, okay, well, what does that look like? Because I think in pictures a lot of the times. And I thought, okay, well, what does that look like? So I started thinking of body language. I started thinking of all these things. And I just started using it as a filter to understand myself and my emotions. And then it grows from there, and you can start taking, my work very heavily, I find, because I read so much and I have such a deep passion for philosophy and psychology, it's like this is where art can be beneficiary in almost anything that I decide to do. I can use it as a way to understand the great mystery of life and the game itself, So, and I even had a whole series of paintings titled The Great Mystery. And so, that was sort of my uh, that's sort of where it's taken me. But ultimately, it was just just because it felt good, it felt right, And ever since I was a 12-year-old kid and I saw that behind the scenes Star Wars clip, I was like, that's the coolest thing in the world, to sit in a room and just use your imagination and just see what happens. Where does it take you? What doors does it open? All these sorts of things can go on, and it's exciting. So
Yeah.
that to me was the clear indication for me of what I wanted to do.
That's cool. That's really cool, dude. No, I didn't know that because my mom wanted to be an astronaut, and she just ended up deciding to want a family, but she still does like really cool things. She's a science nerd, so
Yeah.
she still does technically the things she loves to do in terms of science, and she, she surprised me as I grew up. I think there's that mentality of you just work a desk job, but she really loves what she does, and
Yeah.
but yeah, so I think it's cool. I didn't know you wanted to be a little astronaut. That's so cute.
Oh yeah. I wanted to be I wanted to be a Dr. Grant. I wanted to do it all,
Yeah.
And ultimately what it comes down to is now I guess it's just I want to be a storyteller. I want to tell stories. And just as everyone decides to choose to tell their story a certain way, I'm choosing to do mine through art.
Yeah.
So, it's whatever you see fit.
Awesome. All right, dude. What led you to the medium you use the most in all of your artworks, and what other mediums or techniques would you actually like to learn?
Well, that's another funny story. So, starting off, I only did pencil. I only did graphite. And going all throughout middle school and high school, they never gave us paint. I think partially because they knew like giving teenagers a bunch of paint was just asking for trouble.
Really, they gave us oil paints and.
Well, they really trusted you.
Yeah.
They didn't trust us.
Oh, we sucked at it though. I'm like, why are we doing this? But anyway.
But so they gave us color pencil. So I used color pencil, but it was still pencil nonetheless. And what I ended up doing is when I graduated from high school, I'd never really touched anything. I touched paint once, and I was asked to paint a skateboard with someone in my class because my school was selected for this exhibit at the Cultural Arts Center here in San Antonio.
Cool.
And so they said, well, we're going to give you a skateboard. We want you to do research on why skateboarding is so unique to San Antonio or Texas in general, understand skating culture and stuff like that. And so it was really, really cool. But they wanted us to do it with paint. And so I thought, okay, well, this is a chance for me to pick up something. So I learned painting a little bit, but the minute I painted that, I'd never really touched paint. I kind of thought painting's not for me. And then as I'm going through college, I'm taking drawing 2 at this point, and I'm already starting to feel sort of like antsy, like I want to try something else, And drawing 3 wasn't offered the next semester because it would happen every other semester. Right. So I thought, well, I got to fill this credit with something, and I remember going, you know what? Because I saw what students were doing because they had the student exhibit up, and I saw the paintings in that, and I thought, wow, there were some paintings that really, really grabbed me, and I thought, this is cool. Maybe this is something just to try it. Why not? So I I ended up going into class that day, and we're doing critique, and they're talking about one of my drawings, and one of the professor goes, because he mentioned how the drawing, I guess, had a painting quality to it, I guess, in the terms of how I used the charcoal. And he said, have you ever taken painting? I said, no, but it's funny because I think I am going to take it next semester. And he goes, good. He goes, you're going to be in my painting class. So I said, okay. And I signed up for painting, and I showed up first day of painting, and I did a little, I still have it. It's up in the corner of my room. You can't even see it, but it's like, I still have it as a reminder. But it was this little 16 by 20 painting, and I based it off of this drawing, and I'm sitting there and I'm painting, and I'm so delicate with the paint, and I'm treating it like it's pencil. and I'm getting frustrated.
Mm-hmm.
And the professor walks up behind me because he can see I'm frustrated, and he goes, Dante, stop drawing and start painting. And I didn't know what he meant by that.
Yeah.
But I thought, you know what? Sure. So eventually what I did after a couple more brushstrokes of frustration, I went into the parking lot and I grabbed a handful of dirt and I put it in a plastic bag and I mixed a bunch of paint with it and I splattered it on the canvas. And I didn't use a brush the rest of the painting. I used a palette knife.
Wow.
And I just made this very interesting painting with textures and all kinds of stuff. Still kept to my image, but this time it had layers of color and texture. And we put it up for critique a week later, and my professor goes, I think you snapped, but in a good way. And I remember after that critique, I went, you know what, this is what painting is. And that's when I had to sort of figure out, because with drawing a lot of the times, especially with the way we're taught in college, it's objective. You're drawing the still life in front of you, and you have to be as true to that as possible.
Right.
But with paint, it's a little bit more on the fluid side, to where you don't necessarily have to stay completely true to what you're painting. You know, a lot of the times it is this abstract sort of free form flow that's involved with painting, where if you don't think about it necessarily as a concrete thing like a drawing, and you think about it more as, say, Legos, where you build up layers and layers and layers, then painting becomes much more of a flow process than drawing, you know. So with drawing, you know, you can make a mistake and you can try to erase it, but there's still maybe remnants of it left. With painting, you can just paint over it,
right,
you know, and the layers can be there and you can build it up more and more and more. So there's room for mistakes sometimes with painting, depending on how you paint. But I think for me, you know, that's when painting made sense for me, and I've been hooked ever since. That was in the fall of 2016, I think. And, you know, after that, I decided, okay, I enjoyed stepping outside of my box. You know, I was no longer just thinking in draftsman terms. I was starting to learn more about painting. So then I thought, well, let's just try a little bit of everything. So I took sculpture and photography, and yeah, it's just, for me, that as far as the mediums that I would like to explore in the future, I guess it's more about just, because with sculpture, I stuck with a lot of recycled material, you know, and I worked a lot with paper mache and all that. But there's parts of me that really wants to get my hands on, say, like marble, you know.
Yeah.
I'm just really curious, you know, with how did Michelangelo or Donatello do it? You know, there's just so many different avenues that you can go in each sort of art field. You know, with photography, you know, we did digital, but we also did film. And I really, really enjoyed film. And so, you know, film was something that is something I'd like to maybe continue to explore down the line.
Yeah.
You know, I find that there's just all these avenues to tell your story, that, you know, why limit yourself to just one? So
right. For sure. Yeah. You need to talk to Martin about wanting to work with marble. He expressed that one time. He's like, I want to like go learn how to sculpt with marble. And I was like, go to Italy and learn. I think they actually have like a what was it, academy or whatever there. They learn how to sculpt in marble. And he's like, ooh, we should do that. That was a long time ago when you said that though. But yeah, it's an amazing material. I don't know if I would learn it necessarily, but I would like to like sit there and be like, I'm here. I'm just want to watch, you know. It's just like it just amazes me, like, you know. Yeah, and I think that's really cool. It's just how you always have these like little moments where you realize like, okay, I like paint. Okay, I like, you know. I don't know. I don't know if I've ever had those moments, or maybe I just don't keep them in my head. At the same time, I think if it was such a profound moment, it's just like it would stay in my head, so to speak. You know what I mean? So I think it's funny when I hear you say stuff like that, or I read like and they do get kind of cheesy, but when I see like interviews or books written about certain artists, and they're like, so and so's been taking photos since they were a child with their first camera, and it's just like, I started in middle school because I randomly wanted to, but because I like dance, and I took photos of my dance friends.
Yeah.
And yeah, and it's just kind of like, I didn't have a moment necessarily where I was like, you know, I don't know. It's interesting to me that you have those moments, and I'm like, oh, I always feel like they're exaggerated when I read those kind of things, but it's
Hmm.
cool to hear it from your mouth, like that you had that minute to,
Yeah.
decide it. So was that
Well,
Rodriguez?
and
Sorry.
it was Rodriguez.
It was
Yeah,
Rodriguez.
it was Rodriguez.
I figured.
Yes. Um, I still to this day I'm like, hey, I'm learning to not draw and paint, and
Yeah,
he's like, good. So,
that's what I
but
need to do.
well, and so speaking on, if you're, it's like, well, I don't know if I would necessarily think in that way or anything like that. That's what makes you you,
Mhm.
right? That's what makes you an individual. What makes you unique. There's only one Alyssa Londes who will think the way that you do. There's only
Mhm.
one Dante Dipasquale who maybe thinks the way that I do, and that's you. And that's where your story comes into play. That's where you as the individual get to express yourself and say, this is who I am, and
Mhm.
maybe this is who I want to be. There's always a way to, there's always the chance to chisel away at your sculpture, so to speak,
Mhm.
of your life. And so, yeah, I think in a lot of ways, like going back to subjectivity and individuality and stuff like that, like it's there.
Mhm.
And you just have to be willing and brave enough to tell the story. And a lot of the times it's just not worrying about what other people think, but rather just doing what you think is best for you,
Mhm.
what you see fit for your mind and how you want to live your life.
For sure.
So, yeah.
Yeah. I also want to ask: is following professional artists, or I guess artists with a lot of followers, if anything, on social media, good for inspiration or a slippery slope to intimidation and imposter syndrome? Uh, what would you say to a young or new artist who is really unsure of themselves, their work, and maybe going through that imposter syndrome constantly?
So it's interesting because the following, popular artists or anything like that, there's a lot of them that I do follow.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I like their work because it's very profound and it impacts me and it hits these cylinders for me: emotional, psychological, philosophical, imaginative. And so to follow those artists and stuff like that, it can be inspiring, very much so. If there's ever times where I feel like I've hit a creative block,
Mm-hmm.
and it's just like, man, I don't know, nothing's clicking for me right now. Sometimes you just go on their website and you see what they've got going on. You're like, oh, that's interesting.
Mm-hmm.
They've chosen to paint in this sort of way or sculpt in this sort of way, whatever. Um, but the imposter syndrome, though, can happen because there's been times where I am maybe sketching a thumbnail out for a painting and I'll find myself adding elements into it, and I'm like, that looks like that one artist. And I don't know if that's me. As much as I really like that work, I have to harken back to myself
Mm-hmm.
and saying, okay, well, what is something unique that I can bring to the table? Because we all do. We all have different mindsets and everything. So we have something unique that we can bring to the table. So then I'll think of, well, okay, if this is the part that makes me feel is this artist's work, let's take that part out.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what do I want to put there that hasn't been done? What's that juxtaposition that I
Mm-hmm.
can find? So for me, the imposter syndrome can kick in. And for younger artists and stuff like that who may be struggling to find their voice, it won't happen overnight. As much as I guess dry as I can put it, it won't happen overnight. Um, with your art, I find that if you want to make really powerful art, you have to first of all have experience, life experience. And by life experience, I mean just going out and experiencing things good or bad. Travel
Mm-hmm.
somewhere. Maybe I haven't driven to this side of town before. Maybe I'll go over there. Let's see what happens. Maybe something over there will spark. And you build up this library of images of your experiences. And from there, then you go, okay, now I think I have enough here to make something. And what's funny is that in making, you may start off with one piece, but then something will happen. At least I find that this happens a lot, where something in one piece that you do that has come from your heart and soul, there's something in that piece that you'll go, oh, that's interesting. Maybe I'll think about that in this next one. And
Mm-hmm.
then you just start the cycle, of just going from one to the other. And so, yeah, I mean, I look to other artists not necessarily for reference, but rather for imagination, for
Mm-hmm.
inspiration. And what I end up doing is I go, okay, I there's something interesting here. And a lot of the times for me, what it's come down to recently is wordplay. So let's say their piece is talking about greed, you know, then it's like, okay, well, they've done this painting with greed. Okay, I'm going to take this word, forget the image. Let's take the word greed. Okay, what does greed mean to me? And then you
Mm-hmm.
do all this research. For
Mm-hmm.
me, it's all research. And so, yeah, I find that for young artists who may be trying to uh, find their voice, it's research and it's life experience. Everyone has something unique that has happened to them,
Sure.
you know, and so it's just a matter of telling that story. And when you act from that center of yourself and you take your experiences and put them into something that is productive, like art, something that is good for you, then you will end up finding there's something that may spark there. There may be that bliss that Joseph Campbell speaks of,
Mm-hmm.
that will suddenly hit with you, and you'll go, oh, okay. And it's interesting because with bliss, Joseph Campbell always talks about when you follow your bliss, you put yourself on a track that you feel has been there all along, but you never quite knew it, you know? And so when you follow your bliss, a lot of the times the tendency is to try and control it. But a lot of the times for me, it's don't try to control it. Let's just see where the track goes, you know? And maybe that'll be a part of the game is getting on that track.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Cool. Yeah, and the reason I brought up this question is from a personal standpoint. I was talking about this with Martin one day, where I've been trying to get into doing some watercolor, some gouache, and then some marker work, and because I love specific design styles that a lot of artists do. But since I'm new to that medium and I was looking to those people for inspiration and for exercises, I got to a point where I got that imposter syndrome because it is new to me, and
mm-hmm.
the other thing about social media is people put the good things on social media. They don't, it's very rare they show the fuck ups, the mess ups, the everything
Yeah,
messy that they go through, maybe all the 50 drafts they go through. And, that's something I ended up being like, I have to remind myself when I look at these things, they weren't always good at this, or maybe for all we knew, they had a really bad day, but they got it, fixed and done, ready to go and print out for their job or whatever they do. And
mm-hmm.
you know but at the same time we don't see it all the time,
Yeah,
and especially that's why I ask for new artists, young artists, because in my case I have been an artist, especially in photography, for a while, but I'm a new artist in this new medium for me. And I think it's just that it's great when we look for inspiration. I look at, Imogen Cunningham, and Annie Leibovitz, Mario Testino for my photography, Alex Prager. I look at them all the time, and then I've even looked at, like, excuse me if I say her name wrong. I never know how to say it. Yayoi Kusama, and I've done different photographs, kind of inspired by her pattern making and color, and you know I can do it so well with photography, but when I looked at it for paint, I was just like, I can't do this shit. And you know, Martin made good points when he was like, I'm going to send you these videos, and they work on technique first, and you know, controlling the paint, so to speak, because watercolor can be tricky in terms of technique, and it's not like what you do with oil or acrylic, where you can just layer, and it's not, you know, because it has to start out real light. What's up, dude?
Yes.
Yes, he shared Jeff Watts with me.
Jeff Watts, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Did you say gouache?
For watercolor and gouache.
Sure, I guess more gouache, but yeah.
More gouache, yes.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Okay.
So yeah.
Yeah. Well, and you know, talking about when you're starting out with a new medium and stuff like that too, something interesting is that with a lot of artists, there's this I don't know if trend is the right word, but there's this reoccurring thing where people start with the art, then they get obsessed with the artist, then they turn to real life, right? And there's this cycle. So you get obsessed with the art and you like the style, then you start thinking about the artist who did it. Then you start wanting to study their style, their technique and everything. And so when you get to that point, maybe it does start to feel like imposter syndrome, but realize that those are just the building blocks for ultimately turning to real life and turning to your experiences.
Right.
You know, for me, when I first started drawing portraits, I got and I still have it. It was my Bible for years, but it's a book called You Can Draw Star Wars. Going back to Star Wars. And it was done it was done by that illustrator that I mentioned earlier, Matt Bush. And he shows you how to draw everything from Star Wars, including portraits. And I saw how he did Luke Skywalker. So I would study his Luke Skywalker over and over and over. But I realized that I was doing it in his style. And so, but I didn't look at it as imposter syndrome. I looked at it as these were the foundations where I needed to learn this, you know. Then here came the tricky part, but this is where I learned to develop my own skill set, was because I did it over and over and over again. A lot of the times when I went to school the next day, I wouldn't take the book with me because I was afraid it would get stolen. But I really wanted to draw Luke Skywalker. So I had to learn from memory. And when I did it from memory, I would learn, okay, I don't remember if it looked like this, but this feels right in the way I'm using the pencil and the way I'm moving the paper or the pencil across the paper, you know? And so then I started to develop my own awareness, my own understanding. And so very much for you with watercolor, you know, if you turn to Jeff Watts and you see how he does everything, and it's like, okay, these are the foundations. It's like, cool, this is done in his style. Let's see how much of that I can retain, because in understanding how much you can retain from memory, then you can start to develop your own style, I guess. And so that's when you start turning to life at that point. Because then what I ended up doing is after I drew Luke Skywalker 40 times, you know, and I started doing it from memory, then I went, okay, well, if this is the basic structure, you know, you start with the circle and then you do the jawline and everything. Let's look at another picture of Luke Skywalker that this artist has not drawn before, and let me see if I can do this on my own. And then I started to just go from there, and you just keep going and going and going. And with oils, you know, the interesting thing with me with oils was I never was taught how to use oils. I learned oils on my own. But the foundation of painting was still there from when I took classes. And I was very fortunate enough to have Professor Rodriguez, who the way he taught his class was, you know, you experienced this a little bit. You walk into his class, you sit down at an easel, you get your paints out, and you get whatever project you're working on. He walks in, he takes roll, and then he walks out, right? And he wanted you to figure it out on your own of what it means to paint. So to me, that was for me, and that doesn't work for everyone, but for me, that's kind of what I needed in order to understand what painting was was to not have someone necessarily always hold me by the hand, but just say, here's all the tools.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see what you can do. And then from there, we can build up your skill set. So that's
Mm-hmm.
when we have the critiques, and we would have these constructive moments where it was like, this is working, maybe this isn't. Okay, that's something that I can now work on, you know? So, yeah, for a lot of young artists out there who are worried about the imposter syndrome, as long as you are developing your skill set and you're understanding the technique of it, as long as you get the technique down, then there will come a point in time when you will start to notice, I keep doing it this way, like with this artist, but I'm kind of getting bored of it.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it can resort in boredom.
Yeah.
So when I'm bored, let's do something else.
Mm-hmm.
And so then that's when it's your chance to maybe look at something in real life and try it with that. Take that same technique and apply it to something else,
Mm-hmm.
so that you can build your skill set even more as an artist.
Right.
So
A lot of that reminds me of when I was growing up as a dancer, and there would be, I won't say her name because I don't really need to, but there was this dancer, and she was older for sure, but everyone kind of, I heard the older girls especially being like, God, she can just throw her leg up there and it's no big deal for her. And, we were always told like she has this like natural ability where she can learn things fast and her technique can just be done really well. Her flexibility is really easy for her. But at the same time, we learned later on, and no offense to her because we love her to death, but, her thing wasn't taking that technique and turning it into something different, turning it into something that was beyond ballet and was more, I guess, a contemporary look or something that had its own feel to it, its own emotion, where it's your own thing. She, it was just her thing to do ballet. And there are people like that, and people get jealous of those people. But at the same time, it's like, but a lot of them can't get past this, like the rules of ballet. Ballet is very structured, very disciplined. And we have taken it over the years and turned it into more ballet contemporary, or we do different things with it. And it's really cool and we love watching it. But at the same time, not everyone can do it. And it's there's nothing wrong with that either. You can be strictly ballet, you can be both, you can be one or the other. You can be hip hop, you can be yeah. And that's something that bothered me over the years of watching, like, So You Can Dance. They wanted them to do everything, and I'm like, I understand it's a competition and it's really hard to size up, like watching a hip hop number with a contemporary number and then only letting them do those things as opposed to challenging them. I get that there's a challenge, but when you just started as hip hop, maybe, you know, I think her name was Danielle one season. She got really far and she was hip hop and she was also a plus size compared to a lot of women in the season. And a lot of people thought she skated by, but I was like, no, she worked hard and really challenged herself in these things that she's never done before. But it did bother me a little because I'm like, I just want to see her and what she expresses with her work sometimes. It's a little bit of a double-edged sword with that.
mm-hmm.
But yeah, and I think there's a huge thing with, wow, I lost my thought. We can do that sometimes. Yeah,
that's how long we've been going.
Oh yeah. Oh, okay. I remember now. Yeah, when you said that you were like painting something and then you saw it was coming out more in that artist style and not your own, and then you're like, okay, I've done this, let's move on from it and do something else. I think that's one thing maybe people should uh, realize is, yeah, we, like you were saying, maybe use it as your foundation, your exercises. Like there's nothing wrong with that, and then find
Mm-hmm.
your way there. Like I don't think there's anything wrong with drawing like them, as long as you eventually get away from them. How long that takes is up to you, and there's no time limit. And I think that's another thing people get stuck in. It's like, I need to do it within this time frame, this quickly, and
Yeah.
yeah, it's difficult. It's really difficult, but I think everybody's capable of it no matter what. So
Definitely. And it's interesting because talking about, well, first of all, the whole idea of rules and stuff like that. Like I said, there's times when rules can be interesting and challenging.
hmm
But I'm trying to remember who said this, and it the person's name escapes me, but I'm pretty sure there was a quote at one point that said, "You have to know the rules in order to break them."
right.
Right? So if you understand the foundation, then you can find out what you want to take away and what you want to add to make it your own,
hmm
right? And then speaking on time, because what you just said with time and everything was awesome, and how it's there really is no like perfect time. Like there's
hmm
this concept of like, oh, there's the right time will happen. It's like, no, the time is whatever you decide it to be.
hmm
And there's an actor named Boris Karloff who he played the original Frankenstein
Oh, okay.
in one of the Frankenstein movies. So Boris Karloff, here's the interesting story about him. He, for the longest time, worked in the coal mines, and he had a family and everything, and he worked in the coal mines. And it was only when he was about 44, I believe, 44 years old, when he decided, you know what? I want to try this acting thing just for the hell of it. Let's just try it. So he went to an audition. He got the part of Frankenstein, and now he has become one of the most memorable horror monsters of all time.
Uh,
You know, but it just goes to show, even at 44, you can still make it happen.
hmm
There's never this like, oh, I can, if I don't do it by this point, it's too late. It's
Yeah.
never too late. You know, it's just a matter of, are you willing? I guess the question of, are you willing to put in the hours?
hmm
Are you willing to have the passion, the determination, and the discipline? You know, and not necessarily care what other people think, but ultimately come down to what you think.
hmm
Is this the right time? Well, let's find out, and you just
hmm
go for it. There's the I guess, keep going to movies, but in the third Indiana Jones movie, The Last Crusade, there's a scene in there in that movie where um, he reaches a ledge, and it looks like it's this bottomless pit, and he's reading the notes that his dad told him to get to the Holy Grail, and the note says, uh, in order to make it, you must take a leap from the lion's head. And so now he's faced with this dilemma of, do I take the leap and possibly plunge to my death? I mean, I don't know what's going to happen, but it's a leap of faith.
hmm
And so what he ends up doing is he takes this note, he puts it against his chest, he grabs his heart, and he goes, I believe, I believe, I believe. And he steps forward, and lo and behold, there was a path that was disguised there. And but he wouldn't have done that if he had not taken that leap of faith in himself. And so I think there's a point where you have to take that leap and go, I'm going to do this,
hmm
you know? And so, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And just a real quick add on too, I've talked about before, like, and I think I used to be stuck in that timeline thing. I think because from a college perspective, of course, people are always like, get college done in 4 years and you're golden.
Yeah.
I've been in college for almost 10 years. And I think by the time I graduate, it'll be 10 years. So,
Yeah.
and nothing wrong with that. Honestly, nothing wrong
No.
with that. And I didn't know that back then, though. It's like, this is a plan, get it done,
Yeah.
But it's just, again, losing train of thought. Oh no, come back, come back. um,
Well, something that
yeah,
while you cycle through your
thank you.
thoughts there, a story that I like to share, because I worked at the airport for
hmm
a little while. I was there for about 4.5 years. Excuse me. And I remember helping a gentleman one time, and I believe he was a Vietnam vet, and he was in his 60s or 70s, I believe. And we're going through security, and for just to add context to this, for people who don't know, when I worked at the airport, I assisted people in wheelchairs. And so there's this gentleman in this wheelchair, and he needs help. And I'm getting him through security. And he puts his backpack on the conveyor belt and everything. And I meet him on the other side of security. And he's getting in his chair and everything, and he's getting situated. And I'm getting ready to hand him his stuff. Well, I pick up his backpack, and it's heavy.
Mm-hmm.
And I went, wow. I said, your backpack's really heavy. He goes, it's full of textbooks. I said, oh. He goes, I'm going to school right now. And he said, you're never too old to learn something.
Right.
You know? And so for him, he was like, I don't care if it was when I was in my 20s. I don't care if it's when I'm in my 80s. I have this dream of mine to go to school and get this degree and do what I want to do with my life, and I'm going to make it happen no matter what, you
That's
know?
cool.
And so there is no deadline, you know?
And that's exactly what I wanted to say too. Yeah, I've discussed before where after having that thought about I need to get school and I need to get my career started, I thought later, and I always remind myself, there's no timeline, especially for my career. There's no timeline. And I think there's no timeline for a lot of careers. I think there
No.
are exceptions for like football players or dancers, but even they've broken those barriers. We've seen, people go beyond the years. And I do kind of hate when commentators, even though I don't watch a lot of sports, but commentators will be like, wow, that old man still out there playing football or basketball. I think they did that to Tim Duncan a few times. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
gives a shit,
Yeah,
he's still got it. Go for it,
yeah.
and same with dancers too. There's been some who leave. When they leave, of course, some unfortunately go through injuries. They can't dance anymore. But there are still dancers who are over 50 or 60 who are still principals in their dance companies, and it's
Oh, yeah.
incredible what they do.
It's funny to watch. I don't watch it very often, but America's Got Talent.
Mm-hmm.
And you see the 80-year-old lady who kind of hobbles out on the stage, and then she takes her trench coat off, and she's in this awesome outfit, and she's this amazing salsa dancer.
Right.
You know what I mean? And you're just like, whoa.
Right.
Like, there's just so many individual cases that it's sometimes it's very easy to fall into a general mindset,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's very easy to fall into this mechanical way of thinking. But for me, life is organic. It's not mechanical. We make it mechanical because in some ways we do need mechanics to make it structured, because sometimes structure does help us. But life is very organic.
Right.
Life goes in so many different directions, and you don't know what's always capable until you try.
Right.
And so, yeah, I think just like don't necessarily always think in the general terms or anything like that. A lot of the times for me, it's, what, let's forget about generality here. Let's just try it just for the hell of it.
Yeah.
Why not?
Yeah. Sounds like the documentary I was watching with my parents the other day on Linda Ronstadt. I don't know if you know who she is, but she's a singer, and she really just had this attitude like, sure, let's do it. Sure, why not? And then of course she was very critical of herself too. She would go into sessions trying to create music and be like, I'm not doing well. And they're like, girl, you sound so good. She goes, no, it needs to be better, but that's what made her good, because that was her passion. And unfortunately now she has Parkinson's and she can't sing the way she used to anymore. And they even showed her singing with her nephew and her cousin. And she couldn't hit a note. And, she could have that huge disappointment in her face. And someone behind the camera asked her, I mean, you were singing, weren't you? And then she's like, yeah, but it's not really singing, because that's not how she used to sing. And at the same time, she's like, but I'm going to sing this with my family because it's a family thing, and it's still in her. But it's sad that she can't just do it. But at the same time, everyone who knew her in the documentary talked about, I think she's fine though. She doesn't have to do all these shows. She doesn't have to do all these things that she liked singing, but it wasn't her thing. She didn't like touring. She didn't like doing anything. She just wanted to sing and make art. And she did more than just rock. She went and did movies and did opera, and it was amazing. And she's Mexican, and nobody even knew that except for her. And she did Mexican music for a long time, and that was one of her last performances too. And it's incredible. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, there's an artist, actually he was on the Star Wars video that I mentioned when I watched when I was 12 years old, and I still watch it to this day. But there's an artist on there named Ian McCaig, and it's interesting because he's an artist, he's still a concept artist, and he does lectures, he teaches, but he's still designing, he's still telling stories. And he was asked about like physical challenges, if there's been challenges in his life as an artist. And he said, yeah, I've had some physical ones. For him, he is partially blind in one of his eyes. You know, and as an artist, maybe you kind of freak out because you rely on your eyes for senses. But his quote, and I'm going to try to get it right here, but I love his enthusiasm because he goes, it doesn't matter. He goes, even if I lost both my eyes, I could sing, I can sculpt, I could dance, you know, I can do whatever I have to just tell my story, you know? And so that enthusiasm for life is something that I find that I always try to put inside of myself, and what I always try to encourage everyone else, you know, to have this enthusiasm to just get it done, you know? And kind of this is probably maybe going way back, but for the younger artist trying to find their voice, this is another Ian McCaig trick. And I kind of did it myself, and it was actually really, really a fun process. But he says, if you're trying to find out who you are as an artist, as a person, maybe forget the artist, who am I as a person? He says, get a sketchbook and every single day fill a page with something, whether it's a drawing, whether you cut it out of a magazine, whether you sing it or whatever, just put it in the sketchbook and do it for every single day until you fill up the entire sketchbook, right? Don't look back at your pages from the previous day. Just keep going until you fill the whole thing up. Then when you fill the whole thing up, look back through your sketchbook and it's a snapshot of your soul.
Cool.
And so when he said that, I thought, okay, so I tried doing that. And I did it during a very emotional time for me. And I still have the sketchbook, and it's actually awesome to go back and look at it.
Yeah.
Because then you go, wow, this is who I am, but it's a timestamp. This is who I am at this point, you know. Then you get the next sketchbook and you do the same thing, you know. And so for young artists who are trying to find their voice, it starts with a sketchbook. Get a sketchbook and just fill it with something, anything, you know, and you'll be able to find your voice probably maybe sooner than you think.
Right.
So
cool. Well, before we sign out, is there
Sure.
anything you want to share a little bit about what you're working on or what's to come for you?
Usually I keep my projects on wrap. The one thing that I will say is, so I mentioned that I did a series somewhat recently, and I finished it during quarantine, and it was called The Great Mystery. And now there's a follow-up to that series called The Cave. And so as far as what that represents, I won't say, because you probably know just as much as I am, I can be a giant pain in the ass when it comes to telling meanings and stuff like that. For those who may be curious about why I don't do that, it's just because, put it simply, I don't want to take away your freedom of thought. You know, you have the ability to think for yourself. And in me telling you what something means, I strip away that from you, and I don't want to do that. I feel like that's a disservice to humanity. So, you know, I will let you figure that out. But The Cave is the working title for that series of work. And they're oil paintings of varying sizes and stuff like that. I just ordered canvas yesterday, and I'm going to be doing a really big one. So I'm super excited for that. But yeah, I mean, just on top of the art, just teaching, reading, listening to music, watching movies, getting inspired as much as I can, you know. And yeah, I guess that's just what's going on with me. So
Dude, I can't wait. I can't wait to see what you do. I'm excited. And I love your
Thank
big
you.
paintings. They're amazing. So
Thank you. Well, I really, really enjoy what you've been doing with this podcast. It's really awesome just to see you. I mean, for one, talk about all, because I know through the years that I've known you, you've always been this vocal person who's always wanted to like talk about this, but you've always kind of been like, I don't know if I should do it this way or that way. But
yeah.
I mean, what you're doing with this seems to be working out great for you.
Thank
You
you.
know, as far as like what you're always trying to go for. So
Yeah.
yeah, thank you for letting me be a part of it.
Yeah, of course. No, I'm excited to have you here. I'm excited to see where this goes. I don't have a plan for where this goes. I'm not like, maybe people think I'm lying and think I'm trying to be pretentious, be like, oh, I don't know what I want to do. Do I want to make money? I don't know. I don't know if I want to make money off this. I don't know if I just want to do it for fun. I don't know. And I still love my art. It's not like I'm pushing away from it,
Mhm.
but it, I've had a really tough year, and I know I've said that a lot on this podcast, and there's just been so much that I've been wanting to get up there and talk about. And I've been trying to do it like on my Instagram, on my stories, but they last for 24 hours and they're really short and I always get cut off and then I lose my train of thought. And it's just kind of like, I'm going to make a podcast. I want to talk, I just want to talk shit. If no one likes it, fine. If some people like it, cool. I'm completely cool with that. So thanks for being here with me and talking about
Yeah,
this, especially something we're both passionate about. So,
it's another
uh,
form of expression to tell that story.
yeah,
So
for sure.
yeah, awesome.
Oh, sweet. All right. So, to anybody listening, watching, whatever, go follow Dante on his Instagram. He makes some crazy, awesome ass art. Like I love it. He does. He does. You may not think so, but I do. So.
We'll let the audience be the decider.
But I will put a link in the description for Dante's art. I will also put links in the description for all who submitted their answers. Thank you to all who submitted their answers. Thank you for talking to me today, Dante. I appreciate it.
Thank you,
So,
Alyssa. I appreciate
yeah,
it.
thank you.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Take care.
You too.